As well as learning the hooks that make new language stick, you're going to experience for yourself just how quickly and easily you can become conversational in Spanish. And as not all of you are complete beginners, I've included a section for non-beginners. And if this applies to you, you can skip forward to the time code that's coming up on the screen now, or better still, stick with us for some extra practice. Welcome to ProSpanish. Okay, so have a look at these words now. Now don't worry, it's not just this. Even if this is your very first Spanish lesson, you're going to learn a lot more than what you can see. Okay, so looking at the first line, we've got some quick formulas here so that you can access loads of words that you actually know already. So let's take imposible. Imposible, obviously, that's impossible. Imposible. There are loads of words that end in ble in English, and they're exactly the same in Spanish, apart from the pronunciation, of course. Let's just add something to the imposible. So, es imposible. Es imposible. It's impossible. So, es is it's. So, es imposible. It's impossible. How would you say it's possible? What would that be? So instead of it's impossible, how would you say it's possible? Es posible. Es posible. It's possible. And how about it's terrible? Maybe the service somewhere is terrible. It's terrible. How would you say that? Es terrible. Es terrible. It's terrible. Now the word for to sleep is dormir. Dormir. So nice and straightforward because it's like a dorm where you sleep. Dormir, to sleep. How would you say it's impossible to sleep? So just put those two together, the it's impossible and to sleep. How would you say that? Es imposible dormir. Es imposible dormir. And looking at the second line, find the word for here. Yeah, aquí. So aquí is here. How would you say it's impossible to sleep here? So it might be really noisy, there might be too much light. It's impossible to sleep here. What would that be? Es imposible dormir aquí. Es imposible dormir aquí. Now we've only just started, but already you can see just how much you're learning. And this is no coincidence. It's to do with the sequence I'm using and the hooks that I use so that the language sticks without it feeling at all overwhelming. And this is a key feature that runs throughout my ProSpanish Levels 1 to 6 course. Now, looking at that same line, the same line where you've got here, find the word that means now. Yeah, ahora. So the H isn't pronounced in Spanish. Ahora. Now. And actually, the word for hour, like the hours on a clock, hora is there, H-O-R-A. So it's related to time. So ahora, now. So how would you say it's impossible to sleep now? Es imposible dormir ahora. Es imposible dormir ahora. Now the word for to speak is hablar. Hablar. And to help you remember this, just think of blah, 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 blah. Okay, it's an easy way to remember to speak. Blah, blah, blah. So hablar is to speak. What would it mean if I said hablar español? Hablar español, yeah, to speak Spanish. How about hablar chino? Hablar chino, another language. Yeah, to speak Chinese. Hablar chino. how would you say it's impossible to speak Chinese? I'm sure that's not true, but for the sake of the example, how would you say it's impossible to speak Chinese? Es imposible hablar chino. Es imposible hablar chino. Maybe we should say, instead of imposible, complicado. Es complicado hablar chino. It's complicated. Okay, looking at our second line on the board, find the word that means with you. Yeah, contigo. Contigo, with you. How would you say to speak? So remember, blah, 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 blah. So to speak with you is hablar contigo. Hablar contigo. And how about if you're having some communication difficulties with somebody, you're not getting on very well with them, you might want to say, it's impossible to speak with you, or impossible to speak to you. How would you say that? Es imposible hablar contigo. Es imposible hablar contigo. And we'll just take a quick pause here while I mention my very popular Levels 1 to 6 course. This takes the complete beginner or near beginner right up to a conversational level of Spanish in a series of very easy to follow steps. Now, all the lessons on this YouTube channel are supplementary, whereas the core Levels 1 to 6 is very much a step-by-step program delivered by me, the same teacher as all the other videos on this channel. And while the style is very similar to what you'll be used to from these videos on the channel, the key difference is that every lesson carefully builds on the previous lessons so that you can really feel that progress of going from little or no Spanish up to a level where you can confidently hold a conversation in Spanish. And that course download is available exclusively from prospanish.co.uk. Okay, let's get back to it's possible. What was it's possible? Es posible. Es posible. It's possible. And in Spanish, the question is no different to the statement. There's just a change of voice. So, it's possible is es posible. And is it possible? The question is exactly the same. Es posible. Es posible. So just a rising intonation at the end. How would you ask the question, is it possible to speak with you? What would that be? So is it possible that we've just done, and then to speak, and then with you? How would you say that? Es posible hablar contigo? ¿Es posible hablar contigo? Is it possible to speak with you? And looking at the bottom line, just find the word that means I want. Yeah, quiero. Quiero. I want. How would you say, I want to speak Spanish? What would that be? I want to speak Spanish. Quiero hablar español. Quiero hablar español. Let's add in, I want to speak Spanish now. Quiero hablar español ahora. Quiero hablar español ahora. It could be quiero hablar chino. I want to speak Chinese. Now, a second ago we saw with you. Yeah, contigo. Contigo, with you. How would you say, I want to speak with you? We might also say, I want to speak to you. In Spanish, I want to speak with you. What's that? Quiero hablar contigo. Quiero hablar contigo. I want to speak with you. And of course, we could add on now. Quiero hablar contigo ahora. I want to speak with you now. So far in terms of verbs, we've learned to sleep, can you remember to sleep? Think of a dorm. Yeah, dormir. Dormir, to sleep. And to speak, remember, blah, blah. Hablar, yeah, to speak. And now to be or not to be, or to be a star. And to be a star, because it's estar. To be is estar. And to help us remember, we can think of to be a star. So estar, to be. So looking away from the screen a moment, can you remember the word for to be? Remember, to be a star? Yeah, estar, estar. How would you say, I want to be with you? What would that be? I want to be with you. Quiero estar contigo. Quiero estar contigo. I want to be with you. Or we might say, es imposible estar contigo. Es imposible estar contigo. What do you think that means? Yeah, it's impossible to be with you. I'm sure I've heard that before. What do you think it would mean if I say, no quiero estar contigo? No quiero estar contigo. What does that mean? Yeah, I don't want to be with you. So we just put the no to change it to I don't want. No quiero, I don't want. And of course we could use no quiero with the other verbs. No quiero hablar contigo. I don't want to speak with you. And of course our first verb, dormir, but let's not put that into the sentence. Okay, let's have a look at our next formula. So we had imposible, and now let's have a look at arrogante. Arrogante, you can guess that means arrogant. So a lot of words that end in English in ANT are just the same in Spanish, but we add the letter E on the end. So arrogant, arrogante. And using that formula, how would you say distant? So somebody might seem distant. What's that? Distante. Distante. So arrogante, distante. What about if somebody's elegant? What would that be? Yeah, elegante. And elegante is used more in Spanish because it also means smart. If somebody looks smart, they look elegant. So elegante. And that can be for both men and women. What about it's constant? So we were talking before about not being able to sleep. It's impossible to sleep, maybe because of the noise. And we could say it's constant. What would that be? Es constante. Es constante. And how would you say it's important? What would that be? It's important, using the same formula. Yeah, es importante. Es importante. And going back to a phrase we did earlier, I want to speak with you. Now don't worry if you've forgotten some of those bits. So I want is there on the bottom line, to speak, blah, 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 and then with you is on the board as well. So can you remember I want to speak to you or with you? Yeah, quiero hablar contigo. Quiero hablar contigo. How would you say, I want to speak with you, it's important? Quiero hablar contigo. Es importante. Quiero hablar contigo. Es importante. What about if I said, no es importante? What do you think that means? No es importante. Yeah, it's not important. And going back to it's important, how would you say it's important to speak Spanish? Es importante hablar español. Es importante hablar español. Well, you might want to say to practice, practicar. Es importante practicar español. And what about it's important to sleep now? What would that be? Es importante dormir ahora. Es importante dormir ahora. Okay, look at the next one on the top line in the formulas. So we've got reservar, reservar. And notice that the V is a bit more like a B when we pronounce it in Spanish. So, to reserve or to book, reservar. What do you think it means if I say reservar un apartamento? Yeah, to book an apartment, to reserve an apartment. Or you might say reservar una mesa. Una mesa is a table. So to book a table, reservar una mesa. And to remember a table is una mesa. Try and imagine a really messy mesa. So messy mesa, a messy table. To try and remember that mesa is table. How would you say, I want to book a table? And don't worry if you think that quiero, I want sounds a bit too informal, perhaps a bit rude, because in Spanish, it kind of doubles up as I'd like as well. So it sounds as polite as saying I would like. So I want to book a table or I'd like to book a table is quiero reservar una mesa. Quiero reservar una mesa. And the formula that we have here with reservar is that there are lots of verbs. In English, they end in an E. And in Spanish, you just take that last E off and add AR. So if you look at to reserve in Spanish, take off the E and add AR, and you have reservar. Another example would be to use. So take off the E and add AR, and you have usar. Usar. What about to cause? How would you say to cause in Spanish using that same formula, taking off the E and adding AR? Yeah, causar. Causar. What does it mean if I say causar problemas? Causar problemas. Yeah, to cause problems. That's also the way in Spanish of saying to cause trouble, to cause problems, to cause trouble. And how would you say, I don't want to cause problems? What would that be? Yeah, no quiero causar problemas. No quiero causar problemas. I don't want to cause problems. Or instead you might say un problema, a problem. No quiero causar un problema. I don't want to cause a problem. And of course that would be a very British way to start a complaint about something. Apologise first. No quiero causar un problema. I don't want to cause a problem. Now looking on the bottom row, have a look at the next one along from quiero. It's tengo que. So tengo que, I have to. I have to. Tengo by itself, just I have, as in, well, what do you think this means? Tengo un problema. Tengo un problema. Yeah, I've got a problem. Tengo un problema. The problem might be, es imposible dormir. It's impossible to sleep. So tengo, I have. But if we want to say I have to, like I must, then we need to add que. So tengo que turns it into I have to do whatever. How would you say I have to sleep? What would that be? Tengo que dormir. Tengo que dormir. Now, can you remember what to speak was? Remember blah blah? Yep, hablar. Hablar. And to speak with you is hablar contigo, yeah? How would you say, I have to speak with you? What would that be? Tengo que hablar contigo. Tengo que hablar contigo. And let's go back to reserve or to book. What was that? Yeah, reservar. And can you remember how to say to book a table, to reserve a table? Think of a messy table. Yeah, reservar una mesa. How would you say, I have to book a table? Tengo que reservar una mesa. Tengo que reservar una mesa. And what about to use? Do you remember that formula? Just take the E off the end of use and add AR. So you've got usar. How would you say, I have to use, and then whatever it might be, just that first bit, I have to use. Tengo que usar. Tengo que usar. There might be lots of things. It might be el baño. El baño is the bathroom. El baño, the bathroom. So how would you say, I have to use the bathroom? Tengo que usar el baño. Tengo que usar el baño. And next to I have to, you can see no olvides. No olvides. Don't forget. No olvides. What do you think it means if I say no olvides la pizza? No olvides la pizza. So a message you might send to someone coming home with the dinner. Don't forget the pizza. No olvides la pizza. How would you say, don't forget to book the table? What would that be? Don't forget to reserve the messy table. No olvides reservar la mesa. No olvides reservar la mesa. And how about some advice a parent might give to their child going off to university? Don't forget to sleep. How would you say that? Don't forget to sleep. No olvides dormir. No olvides dormir. And what about this important advice? Don't forget to speak Spanish. How would you say that? No olvides hablar español. No olvides hablar español. So you've experienced for yourself now just how quickly you can learn conversational Spanish without it being overwhelming. And before we go on to the part of the video for our non-beginners, another reminder that my Levels 1 to 6 ProSpanish course is only available for download from prospanish.co.uk. Okay, so on to our section for non-beginners. We're going to build on the language taught in the first part of this video. And we're going to start with no olvides. No olvides, we saw was don't forget. Let's just take it apart for a second. So the verb olvidar is to forget, and you forget. So, for example, you always forget my birthday. You forget, whatever it might be. You forget is olvidas. Olvidas, ending in AS because it's an AR verb. So that begs the question, why is don't forget not no olvidas? Why does it end in ES? If we say don't forget, we're saying don't do something. So don't do this, don't touch that, don't eat, whatever it might be. This is like a negative command. So it's a don't do command. And in Spanish, a don't do phrase, a negative command phrase, needs to have the subjunctive form of the verb. Now, you see a lot of stuff about the subjunctive being super hard and a massive stumbling block, but the easy way to approach it is just that it's a verb form that has certain uses, and you can just tick off those uses and learn them as you go. It's very straightforward. And one of those uses of the subjunctive verb form is a don't do, a negative command. And determining the subjunctive verb form is really straightforward. So we'll focus on the you form, because that's what we've started with you forget or don't you forget, but also because everything else follows on quite easily from that. So the usual non-subjunctive ending for you in the present either is an AS ending or an ES ending. So if it ends in AR, like olvidar, then you is olvidas, you forget. Hablar, to speak. You speak. Hablas, AS. That's the normal present tense or the indicative present tense. And if it doesn't end in an AR, so it ends in ER or IR, then it ends in ES. So you eat. Comer is to eat. So you eat is comes. You go out. Well, to go out is salir. It's not AR, so it's going to end in ES. And it's sales. You go out. And in the subjunctive, it's just the opposite way round to the normal indicative version. So all the ones that end in AS in the normal indicative tense, they switch to be an ES and vice versa. So let's apply this to the verbs we've looked at in this video. So to speak is hablar. How would you say don't speak or don't talk? What would that be? Well, usually in the indicative normal tense, you speak is hablas. Hablas español. You speak Spanish. But in the subjunctive, it's the opposite ending. So instead of AS, it'll be ES. So no hables. No hables. Don't speak. Don't talk. How would you say don't speak English here? So maybe it's in the classroom where you're supposed to be learning Spanish. Don't speak English here. What would that be? No hables inglés aquí. No hables inglés aquí. Right, we saw to cause. Do you remember what to cause was? Yeah, causar, causar. And we saw to cause problems, causar problemas, which is also how we would say to cause trouble. How would you say don't cause trouble or don't cause problems? What would that be? Yeah, so the normal, the indicative present would be, so you cause problems, causas problemas. But it's a negative command, a don't do, so we need the subjunctive. So we need to flip that ending. So no causes problemas. No causes problemas. Okay, I'm not going to go through an explanation for every single one, so let's go on to some practice. How would you say don't use the bathroom? So maybe there's something broken there. No uses el baño. No uses el baño. And how about don't eat that? Don't eat that. So the verb to eat, obviously, comer, and that is eso. So don't eat that would be no comas eso. No comas eso. Okay, let's try a verb that wasn't covered in the first part of the video. Let's try don't go out. Actually, don't go out now. Okay, well, salir, yeah, to go out is salir. So the normal indicative you go out is sales, you go out. So how would you say don't go out now? And I'll just stop you in case you say no salas, okay, because you flip the ending and you're correct. The ending is right. But the other feature of the subjunctive form, the present subjunctive form, is that the root part of the verb, so in this case the sal, comes from whatever the root is for the I version of that verb, the first person. So I go out is salgo, salgo. So we have to take that root, the salg bit, and add our subjunctive ending, which we know is as because it's been flipped. So salgas. So no salgas. No salgas ahora. Don't go out now. Let's try another one like that. Don't come today. So don't come today. For whatever reason, I'm not going to be in. Don't come today. Well, you come is vienes. Vienes, you come. Swap the ending. It would be vienas, not vienas, but that wouldn't be correct because the I come has got a different root because I come is vengo. I come is vengo. So we have to take that root to make the subjunctive. So take the V-E-N-G and add our AS ending. No vengas hoy. No vengas hoy. Okay, try a few of these on your own. How would you say, don't do that? No hagas eso. No hagas eso. So I do is irregular. It's got an irregular root. So it's hago. Hago. So we need to take that root and add on our ending. So hagas. No hagas eso. And if you listen out, you'll hear quite a few G's or G-A-S, gas, in the subjunctive because of all of those go verbs in the first person, like I have, tengo, I come, vengo, I go out, salgo, I do, hago, I say, digo. Well, actually, there's a good one. Digo is I say, digo. So let's see. How would you say, don't say that? Don't say that. What would it be? No digas eso. No digas eso. Because I say is digo, but we want our opposite ending. Well, the full verb is decir or decir, ending in IR, so it's going to be an AS ending. So no digas eso. Let's expand this out a little bit. So before we saw phrases like it's impossible, it's important, so es importante, es imposible, es posible, es terrible. How about if we want to say it's important that you speak Spanish? So it's important that, es importante que, and after this type of phrase, it's important that, it's possible that, it's terrible that, it's great that. These are all called impersonal phrases. After those, you'll always have the subjunctive form, apart from a couple of exceptions which we haven't got time to cover now. So, it's important that you speak Spanish is es importante que hables español. Es importante que hables español. And a variation on how we might say this in English could be, it's important for you to speak Spanish. So it's important that you speak Spanish, or it's important for you to speak Spanish. Either way, we have the construction Es importante que plus the subjunctive. Okay, have a look at this table. Sometimes this is the best way to fix a structure in your head. Okay, so the layout is very straightforward. It follows the structure I've just talked about. For example, it's important that you speak Spanish or whatever it might be. Although, as I said, sometimes in English we might say it's important for you to do something. But in Spanish, the structure is always like this. Okay, so how would you say it's impossible for you to go out? Let's say it's impossible for you to go out tonight, esta noche. How would you say that? Es imposible que salgas esta noche. Es imposible que salgas esta noche. How about, it's terrible that you cause so much trouble. And for so much trouble, we'll say so many problems. Tantos problemas. So many problems, so much trouble. So how would you say, it's terrible that you cause so much trouble? Es terrible que causes tantos problemas. Es terrible que causes tantos problemas. How would you say, it's great that you're here? Es genial que estés aquí. Es genial que estés aquí. How about, it's important for you to say something interesting? What would that be? Es importante que digas algo interesante. Es importante que digas algo interesante. And we could use no with any of these. So we could say it's important that you don't speak English in the classroom. For example, es importante que no hables inglés en la clase. How would you say it's important that you don't use the bathroom? So it still has a problem. Es importante que no uses el baño. Es importante que no uses el baño. How would you say it's important that you don't come late? Es importante que no vengas tarde. Es importante que no vengas tarde. So now, in terms of subjunctive uses, you can tick off don't do or negative commands, and you can tick off impersonal expressions. So an impersonal phrase is something like, it's important that, it's possible that, or whatever. Now, of course, there will always be some people complaining that I haven't covered this aspect or that aspect, but that just makes for bad teaching and bad learning. The way to do it is to tick off what you can learn, and very soon you'll get to where you want to be. Okay, so a quick reminder before we go, the ProSpanish Levels 1 to 6 course is only available for download from prospanish.co.uk.